Do you know that your risk of having cardiovascular disease or event is higher when you have metabolic syndrome? What is metabolic syndrome? It is a combination of at least 5 conditions: diabetes, hypertension, and visceral fat obesity, which is related to stress, cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So that's sugar for you. You increase the sugar, increase insulin production by the pancreas. Eventually, this is ineffective. You have a lot of insulin, enough maybe, but at the receptor level, it is not able to help the glucose go inside the cell to go where it needs to be for energy production. It stays outside to toxicity of the cells. This is a very important mechanism created by God, that the glucose, which is the #1 source of energy of most of the cells of the body, to the cell. So let's imagine this is the cell of one muscle. This is insulin. When knock at the door to be able to enter, or mechanisms around this part that allows entry of the glucose. Otherwise, the glucose will stay in the blood serum that is detected in your blood work as glucose. So this glucose has to go inside the cell to be used as an energy source. When you keep eating sugar or providing sugar by many sources that rapidly increase your sugar, or high glycemic index food, and we're going to talk about that, this eventually gets tired. So more also is produced and is normal, and it's helpful. There's entry of glucose to the cell to be able to be utilized. The chronic high insulin state pushes the body towards pro-inflammatory state. These mechanisms activates signaling pathways, can stimulate pathways like nuclear factor kappa B. This turns on the genes that produce inflammatory cytokines, the tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 6. It can weaken your mitochondria, that's why you feel fatigue, and also promotes the formation of cancer cells. Promotes storage and fat, especially the visceral fat, which promotes inflammation, especially inflammation close to the heart, promoting yourself to a state of cardiovascular risk increase. Remember, diabetes predisposes you at about 50% to have cardiovascular risk or heart attack and stroke. It drives the fat accumulation, especially in the visceral fat. That is why even if you exercise and you have high cortisol level, especially high stress sports and running, you see their pouches. People who are stressed, even if they diet, even if they exercise, they cannot lose weight. Fat belly increases because of insulin resistance related to cortisol, the stress hormone. Number 3, the insulin, or chronic elevation of insulin, is it increases oxidative stress. What is oxidative stress? Oxidation or browning. Imagine avocado, for example. You cut, you expose to the air, it is oxidized or it's rust, it's brown. The same, it ages. So what is to prevent? You put lemon, nitric acid, which is an antioxidant. The contraction also is nitric oxide signaling. So your blood vessels becomes stiff. It's not pliable, so that your blood pressure increases. Imagine a stiff vessel against a pressure that's high, it increases the pressure. Imagine the pressure that is developing or sustained in your kidney, that was supplying the kidney, that slowly kills or the cells, and eventually you will develop what you call chronic kidney disease. Now this is stage 4, which requires replacement of your kidney by artificial means, which is called dialysis. And this activates, which are called AGE, or advanced glycated end products. They're identified. But the bottom line here is that AGE properly was identified and acronymed as AGE because it ages you. Sugar ages. It activates immune responses, and in fact also the immune response. That is with metabolic syndrome, especially, will not respond to treatment, even if they're infected, for example. So it is important to summarize this. Overeating, especially from processed food, high fructose corn syrup laden food. This increases insulin production, eventually tires up, that leads to diabetes, that produces the insulin, becomes able to produce more. It increases fat storage, especially the visceral, they're signaling stress. It increases inflammation, insulin resistance, not able to, the glucose entry to the cell, and again increases insulin. It's a reverberating cycle. Not only that, when you're chronically stressed, the brain demands hedonic appetite for sugar, especially the very sweet high fructose corn, and also salt. And it feeds not only the steroid can increase fat storage. Now you're adding high fructose corn syrup. Now remember, the fructose is metabolized differently from glucose. Fructose is a sugar coming from the fruit, or fructose, that goes directly to the liver and inflames the liver, and in a different pathway can cause inflammation of the liver to liver scarring. Scarring leads to cirrhosis and then liver failure. So what are the interventions to resistance or even stress? They are related, let alone maybe resistance. Let's discuss the core is this. Stress management. Prior to that stress management, you cannot really manage your stress unless you sleep. Yes, sleep is precious as much as you can. Inadequate sleep will lead you to static tone, increases cortisol level, the sugar, let alone the sugar also increases the production of the adrenalines and noradrenaline from the adrenals that increases your blood pressure. That is the reason sleep deprivation can lead you to diabetes, hypertension. Correct the sleep and it will just follow the remedy or the healing desiring. But sleep in itself is very complex. Sleep has many different facets. The brain needs to calm down. You need to develop a good sleep hygiene, number one. The neurotransmitter melatonin is important to help you sleep. Melatonin has its pattern. It is produced when you're exposed to the sun level and it shuts down when there's light going to the lens. At the end of it's dark, God provided with that nature so that melatonin is increased due to sleep. Nowadays, we're sleep deprived. The insomnia is prevalent because of the lights, the stimulus, getting before you go to bed. So your melatonin is no longer there. You cannot sleep. And your mind every day ruminating the reverb of information in your brain. It needs to come down with the taurine increasing, the serotonin increasing, GABA increasing. It needs the B complex to support, to switch the glutamate, which is increased in the hypothalamus or the hippocampus, so that it changes to GABA to calm the brain. So all these things are complex. You cannot just take Benadryl or whatever benzodiazepine to induce sleep. You will be trapped in that kind of condition that you will never be able to sleep ever in your life if you get advice from a good doctor. The digital fasting is very important. It's good for you, for your brain, for your sleep, and for your soul. So sleep well. Micronutrients, minerals like magnesium, selenium, all those things helps. Magnesium helps calm the brain. Selenium helps the metabolism. Chromium also helps. It's also these sugar that into a pro-inflammatory state and not being able to sleep. The good old diet, number one would be to get rid of those sugar. Sugar that is coming from whether it's a refined carbohydrates like bread, pasta, and white potatoes, or the direct intake of high fructose corn syrup from ultra-processed food. Just get rid of it. Learn to cook at home. Do not yield to the temptation of the corporate world that provides you with this convenience of toxic food, really. Because there's so many preservatives that destroys your gut, destroys lifestyle and healthy condition, especially autoimmune disease and metabolic syndrome. Food, those groceries, the take-home food, even those food coming from store that you don't know what's put in there. Know what you're eating. High glycemic index food, know them. That is easily ingested, easily available, and the spike of glucose, that's why it's called glycemic index. If you have any questions, drop the comment so that we can discuss it further in the intervention. Exercise. There's a complex mechanism. Exercise is important. Not only just consumption of energy. That's the most simplified version that belongs to kindergarten. Well, let's learn now. Exercise, even just walking, or doing insulin resistance training like push-ups, pull-ups, or HIIT, or high interval intensity training. The big picture is that exercise benefits you by increasing the uptake of glucose, especially in the muscles and also in the brain when you're thinking, to facilitate the movement of glucose inside the cell where it needs to be used for energy. It's fat and also the inflammation associated with fat. It enhances metabolic flexibility. So exercise is precious. By way of GLUT4, this is an important concept that we should understand. These GLUT4 transporters move to the membrane, close to the membrane here. It opens the door of the insulin receptor to allow glucose to enter. GLUT4 is somewhere here. When you exercise, it's closer to the membrane and allows the opening and the entry. It welcomes the glucose to the cell. That's the best way to do it. This is mediated by AMPK, or AMP activated protein kinase. Sounds fancy, but we have to know this. Exercise, the receptor 1, phosphorylation improves. That's why the function improves. So that's why there is more alert receptor allowing entry of glucose into the cell. There's reduction of intramuscular lipase. There's lesser fat. And when you exercise, try to exercise when you're in the fasting state. For example, early in the morning or before you actually eat. There's increased mitochondrial function. Energy burning is also improved. Visceral fat and the inflammation associated with the visceral fat. What about the good old meditation? Why is this important in resistance? Remember, resistance is very much related to cortisol level. The only way you can reduce stress or the reactions or the effects of stress is meditation. We're talking about guided breathing. Guided breathing is so important that it resets your sympathetic tone to parasympathetic tone. If you do it, breathe in 4, hold 4, exhale 6, hold 4. Do it 20 counts in the morning, at noon, at 3, and before bedtime. This will reset your sympathetic tone to parasympathetic tone and reduce the cortisol level. In effect, also, it has a neurophysiologic effect such that your mind, the prefrontal cortex, will also be mindful about how you react to stress. Stress will always be around you, but it's a matter of how you react and take care of the stress, the effects of stress. That's where meditation helps. It also improves your soul. Soul becomes more compassionate, forgiving, and more into the gratitude state, which improves the hormones inside your body. For example, the oxytocin that engages more connectivity of human interaction. Meditation is a must, core of our wellness. Supplementation, magnesium, needed for the many mechanisms of interaction in the blood or in the cell to produce energy. Chromium facilitates glucose. Vitamin D, it is imperative that your is normal, let alone be optimal, above 60 to 100. Your leisure, music, the type of music, avoid music that stresses you. The good old Mozart study for kids, intelligence, cognitive function of the kids still remains because it has a logical reason. Regular rhythm, melodic, that's the kind of music that you need, is an example. Listen to it regularly. Engage in connectivity with your family, with your friends. Pray that you have a good friend. I have one. No, not one. I have good friends. One in Spain, around in Ave Maria, and they're so good. They're good. They listen to you. You listen to them. Do not segregate age or race or sex. It's better to have a connectivity to a male, because if you're old, you absorb the energy of the youth. The youth absorbs the wisdom of the old. So do not separate, do not segregate. Be friends, and genuinely be friends. Be there for them, genuinely, as Christ had died for his friends. His best friend, John, is young. Avoid overcommitment. It is stressful. Do not be greedy with opportunity. Do not succumb to FOMO, fear of missing out. There's only 8 hours in a day that you can really be productive. After that, the brain shatters. You'll not be productive. Give time to rest. Give time for you to interact. Call your friends from long distance, from your high school, from your elementary. Connect with God, especially. You meditate during the day. You meditate before you go to bed. This is stress handling in a more comprehensive way. I hope this helps us understand why the medication, the pharma, is not totally effective. It's only useful for acute events. But the chronic treatment or chronic management of metabolic syndrome, stress control, which is related to metabolic syndrome and diabetes, can only be approached comprehensively. You cannot deny the soul. The medicine of the soul helps also the medicine of the body and the mind. Till next time, we're going to talk more about topics related to medicine and faith. In different videos, we'll talk about the vagus nerve, which controls your autonomic nervous system and controls your sympathetic tone related to stress. Till next time, this is Dr. Raul Linad from Cadenza Medical Clinic. Have a blessed day. Thank you.